Welcome to Canceled. We are back. We just wrapped up Time Cop, one of the worst things I've ever So we're watching Darkroom. By the way, Adam Hrabik is here. Adam, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. We are watching Darkroom from 1981. It is somehow way more competently made than the Time Cop show that we watched from 1997. That was on ABC. It was like a real show.
I haven't seen Time Cop, but I find that really hard to believe.
Well, here's the thing. Let's go into it. I take it you did not enjoy these episodes.
Here's my thing. I watched the first episode last night. I couldn't believe how bored and upset I was by the end of it. It was like a 45-minute episode. It took me about 90 minutes to watch the whole thing between the commercials on NBC.com and just having to somehow this is one of the dumbest things I've ever watched, and yet it is still so complicated that I had to keep rewinding.
It is incredible. So I will say this: I agree with you 100% on the first episode. It is it is dumb and somehow confused. It's so dumb it's confusing. Like it is but I will say this: I don't think it is poorly made. Like it is shot fine. It is the acting is decent. The story is, I don't even know how to we'll get into it in a second. But what I mean to say is, I felt very much the same way that you did about the first one. I liked the second episode a bit. I kind of enjoyed it, like in a way of like. So if you're not familiar, you haven't watched yet, you should I say watch. And we'll be going through the whole show as always, but it's basically an anthology series, this kind of Twilight Zone-y or Night Gallery, kind of thing.
It's the most blatant attempt at a Twilight Zone ripoff I've ever seen.
What I will say that I enjoyed about the second episode is a lot of Twilight Zones are like little morality plays, or there's like a be careful what you wish for thing going on. The second episode, here's just some creepy shit. Have fun. And I kind of enjoyed that. Like, I also kind of enjoy the weird. It's also weird. So it's two stories per episode, right?
Yeah.
And it's like 3/4 one story, and then like a little tiny short thing at the end of, here's like a 10-minute, this is a little short thing we're going to shoot. That I kind of I like that format. I thought was fun.
The shorter ones are so far have both been better.
Sure.
The second part of the second episode was the only one I have enjoyed so far.
Okay, well let's jump into these fucking episodes. First off, let's talk about a couple things. Opening credits, I really like. It's so weird. It's weirdly paced.
It is. They're just racing through this house that has no furniture in it.
No, there's an empty house, and I also feel bad because like it's a camera real low to the ground, but there weren't GoPros. There's some fucking cameraman with like a 90-pound camera trying to wheel it through this fucking house.
There's a guy who can't like bend over to pick up his kids now because he was filming.
The opening
credits to Darkroom
for sure. But it's also weird because it's like just a voiceover going like, "You feel compelled, pulling you ever closer to the Darkroom."
I wrote it down.
Okay.
You're in a house, maybe your own, maybe one you've never seen before. This is Talking Heads. You feel it, something evil, you run, but there's no escape, nowhere to turn. You feel something beckoning you, drawing you into the terror that awaits you in the darkroom. And he says that faster than I just said it.
For sure, and like, it doesn't go like, you would think drawing you faster to terror that waits you in the dark room would be like the way you think it would go. It goes, the terror that waits you in the dark room, credits. Like that's it. It's just like, it's so jarring.
Nope, one take. Nope. Do we need another one? No, we're good. You nailed it, man.
Which brings us to our host, our Ray Bradbury, the great James Coburn, being like, I almost felt when I was first watching it like it was actually just his dark room, and he was like, I will be the host of your show. I'm going to develop my photography while I do it, and you just have to base the show around that. Like, he just was like too into it.
Yeah, he's like, I think I'm going to go for the Rod Serling thing, but you know what Rod Serling was missing was a little horniness. He wasn't horny enough.
He wasn't quite horny enough. James Coburn, weirdly horny.
Yeah.
And also, so like, you've seen the Twilight Zone, you've seen Night Gallery, you've seen all these shows. Your host comes in, he gives a little thing about, on this street, there's a house, and the house is whatever, like some little thing to describe what the story's going to be. I did not understand even for like a moment what he was trying to say about this first story. He's like, that's there's a poster on the wall, some girl, and he's like, that's Jennifer Mitchell. She was the hot poster girl of the month.
Okay,
which was a thing in 1981. Apparently,
it wasn't Jennifer Mitchell. It was Gina Mitchell.
Oh Jesus, that is. I think my brain just corrected it because that's gross, and I don't like it. Also, it's going to get grosser. The second episode. Yeah. Whoa, boy. But that's I don't even like saying it. That's Gina Mitchell. She was the hot poster girl of the month. But also, this is the real Gina Mitchell, and he pulls up like a 8x10 of a ghoul of just like an undead. She's got like sullen black eyes.
Yeah.
She's got a wart on her face, and it's supposed to be like, oh, they not Photoshop, this is 1981, but they airbrushed this and they whatever, and like which is the real.
Yeah, it was like, this is Gina Mitchell, and this is Gina Mitchell when they found her. Like,
yeah. This is Gina Mitchell when they pulled her out of the lake.
Yes,
like it's just disgusting. But he goes on and on about like who's the real whatever, and it is fucking incredibly confusing, which leads us into our first story, Closed Circuit. I watched it twice. I don't know. I don't know. I don't understand what. I kind of get it. I don't get it. I'm angry at the way they wrapped it up. Like, it just, there's a lot in this that is like shoddy.
They were definitely trying to do like a morality play with this one.
Yeah.
But they clearly like abandoned it with about 3 minutes left in the vignette, and then they were like, we're going to go a completely different way because we don't know how to make this creepy at the end.
They know it's so here's our story. We are following a TV newsman whose name I don't remember, but it's
Greg something.
Yeah, sure. Greg is concerned about his friend, who is the main anchor, Arthur Desmond, who he's like, he called me the other day, so he wanted to talk, and now he's not returning my calls. And apparently that's enough to just be like, well, something's clearly horribly wrong because he's not returning my calls. This is like pre-cell phones. It's not like everybody's in constant communication in 1981, but he's completely freaked out. He is also a wild creep from the beginning.
Oh my God.
He is a grosso, and I don't like him.
This poor woman he's working with, who I think we found out later is his boss.
For sure, he is sexually harassing his boss. That is 100% accurate. I think also they were like, they used to be a thing. That's maybe his ex, something.
Yeah.
Some sort of past there.
By the way, all the men in this episode look 67 years old, and they're all alleged to be 46.
They all are gray as fuck. One of them he calls is like cartoonishly reading a book. He calls his one friend, and he's sitting in a rocking chair in like a cardigan with a pipe, and there's like one light on him. He's just reading creepily.
If you saw the book, it would just, the print would be so big there would be one word per page.
So he's at this office, and he's complaining to this female boss of his that, oh, I don't know where Arthur Dresden is, not returning my calls, but he's seeing him on the TV, right? And he goes, he's been recording out of the Lodi office or whatever because it's on his way home or some shit, right? But he's like, oh, he hates Lodi. By the way, you want to fuck? Like, he is so grossly hitting on this woman.
Yeah.
At one point, he's like, hey, you want to do something or whatever? And she goes, I'm going home and getting in a hot tub. And she's like, oh, sounds like fun. And she's like, no, it's a small tub, dickhead, just for me.
I have to specify the size of the tub to get you away from me.
Like, oh, and also, like, he's supposed to be our hero. And, like, he does it, like, I'm so concerned about my friend. Not concerned enough not to be horny all the time. Like, there's just like some level of concern.
Look, a man has two brains. I don't know what to tell you.
But he gets, when he's calling the cartoonish reader, he gets an operator comes on. It's like, oh, we have an emergency call from Arthur or whatever. And he's talking to his friend, but he's like, this isn't making any sense. You say you're staying at this cabin. First you say your maid called, but then you say you called your maid. What's going on? He lays a little trap. He says, oh, my friend Leo was asking about you. You recommended a doctor that she gets like, oh, great, yeah.
Much more clever a move than we should expect from anybody in this entire series.
I would also say, so basically what he says is like, oh, my friend Leo was asking about you. You recommended this doctor. And he goes, oh, yeah, I'm glad it worked out. And then he's like, ha, there was no Leo. So he's telling the female boss that. And the female boss is like, Yeah, he was just being polite. He didn't remember your fucking dumb neighbor, and he just went along with your boring ass story. Like, that is a perfectly reasonable explanation.
If you're
for
an
that
old
happened.
man and somebody's like, "Do you remember this thing that happened last week?" You would just, yeah, sure.
Yeah, 100%. Also, they start dropping random shit about our. So he's like getting more paranoid, and he goes to the Lodi office or studio, whatever, but he's not there either. It's just an empty studio. Where is he? And then his boss is like, if you keep drinking a bottle of bourbon a day. And I was like, wow. So you're just actually an alcoholic old man who's like sundowning and confused about your friend.
This guy's putting up Steve-O numbers and doing the news.
So he's drinking a fucking bottle of bourbon a day, and he doesn't go like, hey, now that's like a bit of exaggeration. No, he's 100%. Yeah, I'm drinking a bottle of bourbon a day, but it's what I do.
I don't know. Do we see him drink at the office at all?
No, we don't see him drink
so
once.
He just does it from in like the 4 or 5 hours he's awake at home.
Yeah.
Slams a bottle of bourbon.
There's also I wrote this down because I found it fucking dumb as hell. There's at one point he's watching a broadcast and it's Arthur Dresden, right? And he's doing like a human interest piece, and it's about a little boy, a 10-year-old boy whose parents.
Oh my God!
He witnesses his parents going they're going to be getting divorced, and it bothers him so much that he starts his own marriage counseling service outside in the yard, like he's fucking Lucy from Peanuts
for 10 cents a session.
10 cents a session, and people start going, and it makes his parents get back together. And I was like, that is horrible. That family needs to split up for the health of that child. Like, why are you putting your marriage on this? Like, you normally go, oh, it's not your parent, mommy and daddy are getting divorced. It's not your fault. No, this is 100% your fault. Your counseling didn't work. Like, you're just putting it on this child. So he's freaking out. He goes to load it, whatever. He has like I wrote it down because it's a fucking real dumb. There's a lot of real dumb lingo by the end, which is a thing that happens a lot on this show. We cover a lot of like sci-fi and whatever.
Well, because when he goes to the Lodi studio, he sees on the monitor that there's a broadcast going on.
Right.
And so as soon as the recording light goes off, he opens the studio and the lights are off. Nobody's in there except for one guy who's still at the camera for some reason.
Yeah, I'm not sure, which will make less sense the further we get into this episode. But he does say, they say you had a cerebral vascular accident.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he like turns red and falls down the stairs.
A stroke, I'm guessing?
They say later in the episode it was a stroke.
Okay. Yeah. So his boss's boss shows up, like the head of the
whose name is Bill Bellamy.
His name is Bill Bellamy, who tells him, I've taken the liberty of ordering a number of tests. Have you, sir? You're my boss. You don't get to order medical treatments for me. That's fucking crazy.
The studio's paying for it.
Well, then I guess stick me with a bunch of drugs, I guess. I don't understand.
Yeah, and then they wake him up and they shoot him up with Adderall or something.
So they wake him up to give him a shot that's going to wake him up. It
very
says
to
weird.
Help you think. So I'm like, all right.
And they start doing weird, creepy stuff. They make him stare into this camera, repeat these phrases over and over. High altitude jets whiz past. Something about the courageous young cowboys or whatever, right? And he has to say it. He's getting really annoyed.
It's like in Mission Impossible 3 when Tom Cruise makes Philip Seymour Hoffman say all the syllables so he can get the voice right.
Yeah. It's exactly what's happening. Yes. We'll find out. He is then hypnotized by a black lady. It's nice. There's some diversity in the show. And then suddenly he wakes up in his apartment. And I was like, did I miss something? Because he's got like a beard. He's not in the hospital anymore. The boss had told him after you get out of the hospital, you got to take 2 weeks off or whatever. But he goes, no, I'm going back to the office.
Yeah, he's playing with a stress ball, and he goes, this stress ball isn't working. I'm still stressed, and he throws it, and he leaves. He gets. I'm watching him. He's wearing a robe and what appear to be blue pants. I'm like, okay, pajama pants, right?
Yeah.
He gets up, throws the robe off. He's wearing a robe with jeans and a belt.
That's so fucking weird. I didn't even notice that. He also has he looks like he's been drinking a bottle of bourbon a day. Like he's got like the fucking growth or whatever.
Which is what you do after you get out of the hospital.
Sure. Well, when you're a fucking bottle of bourbon a day alcoholic, you drink in the hospital. You're going to go through the fucking DTs real hard.
Well, when they were like, we're going to give you something to help you think, they shot him with bourbon because that's what he's used to.
Yeah. That's his juice. He goes to the office, right? And he's cleaned up. He goes to the office. He gets into runs into the dude. The guy's like, oh, where's the lady boss? I can't think of her name, Megan or whatever. She's in Studio A1 or whatever. He goes into Studio A1 and he sees she's not there. It's like a dude working the boards or whatever. And he's on the TV conducting an interview. And he's like, what the fuck is this? I've never interviewed this guy before. He's interviewing some like Saudi sheik or whatever. He's like, I've never met this man in my life. What's going on? The guy hits this little fucking like emergency button or whatever. What we find out is they have developed electronic transmography. I wrote that down.
The string of technical words that comes out of the boss's mouth.
Gun matrix is one of them at one point.
Okay, I looked this up. This not entirely made up. That's kind of how cameras work. Like,
okay.
It took me several hours to like come to terms with that. But yeah,
basically, what they have done is made like holograms. Essentially, right? They have a little box that has a computer program in it, and they've scanned you, and then they can just have you say whatever they want you to say, right? And he's like, and he's all mad. What are you talking about? You're stealing my soul. You're make me sell out or whatever. And he's like, it's for ratings. I do not understand. So the evil company, right?
Yeah.
What?
Named UBS, which is a Swiss bank.
Okay, it's also I think like a irritable bowel syndrome.
Irritable bowel syndrome.
It's irritable.
So when Charles Barkley has IBS.
Irritable. How is this better? If the whole thing is like we just want people to say what we want to say, just go hire some fucking people to say what you want them to say. Pay that. Their whole thing is like we're going to save money on like the cameras and the lights and the whatever.
Even though they still have cameramen.
They have cameramen doing the job.
Record. Shoot. They were like, we're not paying the anchors. We just have cameramen shooting at a blank wall.
Yeah.
No, I think their justification was because when they did it to Arthur Desmond, Arthur Desmond is apparently dying.
That's what Bill tells him. He says, Arthur's dying. We bought him a 40-foot yacht. He's out sailing. He gets to live his life while being
We're firing 3/4 of our staff so we can buy 40-foot yachts for all of our dying anchors.
I also want to say this. Our hero is like, never. You'll never get me or whatever. For sure. If you're telling me that if I just sit here for 10 minutes and let you film me, then a computer will do my job and I can go sail, I can go to Paris and whatever?
Right. He wants to go like Paris, and Amsterdam, or Athens. He wants to like travel the world.
Yeah. And write his book or whatever. Absolutely. I would love a computer to do my job and I get to like live, like you're paying for all my shit.
It's a great deal. I think that they were saying because he had that stroke, they were like, what if you have the next one? We need to have a recording of you so we can keep having you, Greg, as our TV
we're
personality.
We're going to get to that in a minute.
I mean,
it really confuses me at the end. But he's like, you'll never get me or whatever. And he goes back to his house and he's on his own TV talking to him. And well, first the way he could he's like, this can't be real. And the way they convince him is he goes, the boss says, what's your favorite poem? And he goes, Mary had a little lamb. All
mine
shitty.
too.
Just shitty. Like, I'm a man. I don't have a favorite poem. Mary had a little lamb. And he like, hey, bring up the transmogrifier, run code, blah, blah, blah. Mary had a little lamb. And then the TV comes on, and there he is on the TV doing Mary Had a Little Lamb. And he's like, oh, it's fucking real or whatever. You fucking know it's real. You already saw it. You saw yourself interviewing someone you've never seen before, right? So you know it's real. You don't need this bullshit. He goes running home. Now he's on his TV convincing him, like, he's seeing himself go like, hey, listen, we can really make this work. And he tries to... This made me mad. He's like trying to turn on, like he turns the channel and it doesn't do anything. And the guy's like, look, we set up cameras, whatever. We've got control of your TV. You're not going to be able to do that. Then he unplugs the TV and it stays on.
Yeah.
No, that's not one. Like, I get that.
yeah. I was like,
I get that you can be like, oh, we made it so you can't change the channel.
They didn't.
Totally fine.
Yeah.
They didn't like make it a battery television.
Right.
Like, it's so stupid.
Yeah, we've revolutionized energy sources.
Yeah, that made me. I was like, no, that's just dumb. Now it's magic. Like, you were doing sci-fi, and that's fine. It's just whatever. But that's just magic.
Oh, another part that made me mad about this. So, like, the whole program is they have enough video and audio of these people that they can make them like say whatever. Right. Are we meant to believe that somebody was like hand puppeting this person, this fake Greg, remotely, making him say these exact things because he was saying things that only Greg would really know about himself?
100%. That I don't I get that it's a hologram. You can make it say things, but how does it it doesn't have its own consciousness.
Right.
But the TV Greg it's like a sentient thing.
TV Greg is telling real Greg, if you stay working here, you'll never get to travel.
You've been lying to yourself about this book and blah, blah, blah. All this stuff that like is his inner thought.
You're going to work more and you're going to have another stroke and you're going to die.
He also tells him, you live in a country where only 8% of the population reads books. That can't be right. I know we're not like the most like readers of the country, but 8%? That seems a bit low.
But also then he goes, this country is functionally illiterate. That's not what that means either.
No, not at all. That just means they're lazy, if anything.
I know quite a few people who don't read books, but can read.
Can absolutely read. And he tells him, like, you're going to have to, basically convinces him to take the offer. They'll send you around the world. You get to travel. You get to write your fucking book. He goes back to the office. He's like, yeah, I'm in. He's like, they're going to try it once.
Even though they've already tried it.
They tried it. They've been doing it for weeks with Arthur Dresden.
Yeah.
That's what the news has been for like a month now. So why are you trying it with him? I don't understand. But also, here's what's annoying. He's like, so they're going to cut to you. We'll cut to this camera, and we'll put the TV version of you, the computer Greg, and you'll be in between these two other anchors.
Yeah, he hosts a show.
Are they also computer anchors?
I'm not sure.
Because they're interacting, so... It's not. Here's what's weird. So it's not like when I say hologram, it's not an actual hologram. Like if you were in the room with it, it wouldn't appear as like a 3D thing in a room with you. It just It's just on the television.
It's a deep fake video, basically.
Exactly. So how are they interacting with it?
Yeah, I don't know because we don't. He hosts this show with these two other guys called Calendar. We don't know anything about these other two. Neither of these two are Arthur Desmond, the guy who is missing. As far as we know, the other two anchors are just still alive and fine.
Human beings, absolutely.
Yeah.
So like, I don't get that whole scene just didn't make any sense.
Unless there's like somebody in the studio running cue cards. Hey, here's Greg's lines. Here's when he's saying them. Now go. It's like when.
But then are they in on it? Like, how big is this conspiracy? Right? Why would they go, where's Greg? Why are we doing, why isn't he just here? Why are we faking this interaction?
Yeah, they're sitting on either side of a guy with like a black suit with those white dots.
Balls,
like motion capture. Like when Michael Jordan made Space Jam.
But so it works. Of course it works because they've already figured it out. And he tells the female boss, like, oh, I get to go. I can't believe I got one-way ticket to Paris. I'm going to fucking write on I got my travel typewriter and all my notebooks. 15 years of notes, he says.
15 years of notes for one novel.
And then he says, like, it'd be better if, I wasn't alone because he's still horny. And she's like, I'm sure you won't be. And he's like, that's not what I meant. Yeah, it is. It's exactly what you meant. You just want to fuck this broad. You've been trying it for the whole
only thing you've ever meant. And then before he leaves, he takes off his tie and hands it to her.
What is that move?
Like a cop turning in his badge and gun. It's like when you get hired at the news station, they give you your tie.
It was such a weird move. He also hands her he gives her hands her the letter. It's like one-way ticket to Paris or whatever, the envelope. And I'm like, okay, he's like, hold this while I take my jacket off or whatever. But then when he handed her that tie, I was like, she's your boss. She's not a coat rack. What are you doing? It was so weird.
At no point, other than just where this woman was standing and like the fact that she held information over him, that was the only time she ever seemed to have any authority over him.
Well, she says shit. She gives him instructions that he doesn't follow, and then she's fine with it. In the beginning of the episode, she's like, "We have a budget meeting at 4 or whatever, right?" And then he doesn't go, and she sees her later, and he's like, "Hey, way to pull your weight at the budget meeting." And then he's just like, "Whatever, I'm looking for Arthur."
Yeah.
And she doesn't give a shit, but she's clearly told him as a boss here, you have to be at this meeting.
Well, bosses are usually fine with that kind of thing.
She's also like the meeting with, so she's in on the projector thing, the transmography or whatever. He's like, all right, I'm on my way. I'm going to catch my flight. And he's leaving, and two guys are like, you got to come with us to the lower level. This also made me laugh, too. Because he's like, to the lower level. He goes, the basement? And like, no, the lower level. Then they get in the elevator, and there's a lobby button. There's an LL button, which should be lower level, you would think. Yeah. And then there's a B button for basement. Yeah. And I was like, oh, they're going to go to LL. They go, the lights just go past LL, past B, and then nothing. Yeah. And then that's like a secret level. But then what the fuck is LL? Like, why is that on this button? And he gets down there, and they go. Basically, the boss is like, "No, you can't leave." He hits him with the jazz palmentary. Says, "No, here's the only problem." Like, and of course, it makes perfect sense. You can't have these people out running around. Somebody sees them, and they're live on TV. They're gonna be like, "What the fuck's going on?" So, like, obviously, of course, they can't let you leave, right? And now he doesn't get to go to Paris. He doesn't go to whatever. He has to live the rest of his days in this fucking apartment down in the basement of this building. And he's like, you can have all the finest things. You can have women, whatever you want. So they're going to like just bring hookers in for him.
Right, yeah.
Which is gross.
It's going to be like Bin Laden in his compound.
Yeah, just porn and shit everywhere. But here's what was pissing me off. This is when he tells him, like, you know, look, if like, what if you had that stroke? What if you have another one? Or what if you decide you want more money and you have to quit? We have to have, like, you know, that's why we're keeping you in the basement. But no, you have the thing. You don't need him. I get that you have to keep him away from the public or whatever, but like, but that argument doesn't make sense.
But he's going to be away from the public. He's going to like Europe. He's going to travel. He's going to like get lost and be kind of anonymous for a while, it sounds like. And also, what do you mean what if you want more money? Like, are they still paying him? I can
only assume that was the gig, right? We keep paying you, but then you're not saving money. So how's he travel? I thought they like bought him, like they bought the other guy. The setup was we bought him a yacht so he could go travel.
Yeah.
But so I thought like, oh, they're paying him. You know, we'll pay your airfare. We'll put you up in hotels or whatever so you could do this thing. It just seemed like a ton of work for nothing. Yeah. At the end of the day, you just have first it's like it's for ratings. But what does that mean? Are you manipulating the news? Like, you're not. It doesn't appear as though they are actually manipulating the news. They are just having a hologram read the news. So, how does that help your ratings? It's just the same dude. Nothing's changed. Like, I just don't understand the scheme. I don't understand like the hand wringing where the bad guys were doing this bad guy thing. What are you doing? I don't understand.
I guess their whole thing is like, when people turn on the news, they like to see like a warm, familiar face. Right. And so we're going to keep this warm, familiar face in front of them for as long as possible. But like people notice when people age, and this guy's already been a TV guy for some time. So he's already like aged on TV in the public view for a good while. And now he's just going to stop aging. And
they even say, like, we can probably get away with it for, like, 15 years or whatever. No, I don't know that you can.
No.
It doesn't make any sense. But that's where in the end, he's like, no, you can't do this, and he's trapped in this. And that's, like, his... But, like, if this is a morality play, what did he do that was bad?
Right.
He didn't do anything. He, like, was like, no, I don't think this is a good idea. And then they were like... Then he realized, well, why isn't it a good idea? Like, all they're doing is, projecting an image. Again, they're not manipulating the news. They're not like making world leaders say things. They're not whatever.
They're only just manipulating the guys who tell the news.
Right.
Yeah.
And who gives a shit?
Right.
So like, I don't know that you did a bad thing to end up like.
And he didn't really have a choice. It sounds like at any point, if he had said no,
they would just throw him in the fucking basement anyway.
Yeah, they have a dungeon that they can put you in.
Clearly. And that boss was like, that's one thing, and it more so in the next episode. People's reactions are muted. Other than our hero who's like, you son of a bitch. When the boss is like, all right, come in, he's like sipping a cognac, and he's just like, yeah, this is the hardest part, but yeah, you can't go anywhere. I'm gonna go now. Like, he just delivers it with no, like, there's no menace, there's no sympathy. It's just flat. Just fucking flat. It's weird.
I wonder if this is supposed to mean he's done this many times before.
As far as we know, it's just him and Arthur Dresden, right? It's just the two of them.
But we also...
Because he even says, like, Arthur's down the hall. You may want to pay him a visit or whatever.
Yeah, but then how does he do that? Because he can't even get out of the room.
The room is completely blocked off. That is 100% right. With, like, a force field? Because it's clear. I don't know if it's glass.
Yeah,
whatever it is.
When they're going down the elevator opens right into this suite.
Yeah,
and then when Bill Bellamy walks back into the elevator... Greg tries to follow him, and immediately there is an invisible glass field.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what...
They have more technology, I think, than they're letting on.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Also, if the elevator opened up right to that suite, does that mean there are other elevators then?
This complex is weird.
You need so many elevators then, if they're all going to open up into a separate dungeon.
Also... is Arthur Dresden not dying? Was that all a lie?
I mean,
because it seems like, oh, you're dying, we're going to buy you this yacht would be the trick to get him down into the basement. But then, like...
I almost think so, because the reason they started this in on Greg was because of his health problems. Right. So I think that there was some instigating health problems with Arthur Desmond too.
This was a weird story. It didn't work for me. It was dumb. Like, I was just mad though. Like, I was confused, and then I would rewind it, and I'd be like, "Oh no, like I must have missed something, right?" So I'd rewind it, and I'd be like, "Oh, I didn't miss anything. This is just poorly explained. This is just not well written."
No, yeah. Good one to start off with.
It is a weird choice for your first episode, because it's like it is somewhat ambitious, and like it is a heady topic of sorts, but it's just not delivered.
It also implies that the first episode is usually the pilot episode that they sell the show on.
Right.
And that somebody bought this.
Very weird. Which brings us to our second story.
Oh, my God.
James, it's weird. James Coburn has a little introduction about this man. He works really hard and blah, blah, blah. And then we meet him, right?
Yeah.
And
he works too much. At one point, he says he works 20 hours a day, which I think might be an exaggeration.
It has to be. I don't like. You can't. He works at like a bank. Like he works.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He's like works in like finance or something. So like, what are you doing? The places are closed. This is in 1981. It's not even like global market like that.
I work at the Avoid My Family factory.
Clearly. But we meet him, and he's making a crystal radio, little like science kit thing with his kid. And the wife is like, "Come on, time for bed." And they're like, "Oh, let us stay up with the radio or whatever." They make the radio, and the kid, and you like move this crystal to change the stations or whatever, and they pick up an old timey radio broadcast. And the kid's like, "Let me stay up for another 5 minutes." Or it's like old timey jazz or whatever playing.
Yeah,
so
and it doesn't throw me at first, because I'm not in 1981. I'm in 2019, and the house doesn't look that dissimilar to a house from the 40s.
I couldn't figure out what the time period was at first. Like, I didn't know if this was like a period piece or something. So that when the music started playing, I was like, "Oh yeah, this seems fine." Like, yeah. But we realized it is the 80s. The next morning, the kid says like, "Oh, the Tom Mix show is going on." It's like an old time cowboy like radio serial or whatever. And the dad's like, "Oh, I used to listen to that all the time when I was a kid." And he goes, "Oh," she's like, "I could go, but I need a quarter." And he's like, "Oh, they're showing they're airing the old commercials too. That's weird. Like they must be airing this old radio show, and they're airing the old commercials too. Whatever."
Yeah.
And immediately I was like, "Oh, the radio's like this is like Amazing Stories or something. The radio's getting is somehow picking up radio transmissions from the past.
Yeah.
Right?
And they're eating breakfast, and the cereal box, it's a Chex box, but they can't just have it say Chex on TV, so they cover up the C, so it's Hex cereal.
Just witch's curse cereal. Well, there's weird food shit in this episode. We'll get to it.
Oh, yeah.
There's a weird line that just made me, I literally had I laughed for like 30 seconds.
Okay.
So he starts being like, he's like, "Oh, this is like, this is weird. We're getting these like transmissions from the past." And he says like, "Well, you know, like when radio signals and TV signals, they go out into space or whatever, and they'll just keep going. They don't die off or whatever. So like, you can, if you're far enough away in space, pick up a signal from the past or whatever. That science is real."
Right.
And he's like, "Well, maybe it bounced off a meteorite or a satellite, and it's been bounced back into, and we're picking it up." Okay, like. This is science fiction, but sure, that is a reasonable explanation.
The only thing we're removing is like chance right here.
Yeah.
It's technically could happen.
I guess.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, whatever.
In the world of this bullshit.
Yes. Yeah.
Fine,
right. You're right.
Fine. But then he realizes he starts picking up Morse code signals. And he gets obsessed, right? So he's like translating this Morse code, and he realizes that it's a Nazi spy on an American ship sending a coded message to a German U-boat, and that ship the American ship ends up getting sank. Turns out his father was on that ship, so his father died, and he's like, "Oh, I can like save my dad's life or whatever." But he has built an antenna on top of the house. He's going full like Close Encounters, right? He's going crazy, and he's like telling his wife that he believes fully that that he is receiving radio transmissions from the past. He thinks he can send a radio transmission to the past to alter the course of history and save his father's life. And her response is, "Let me make you a chicken sandwich." I laughed for 30 seconds. She's just like, "Let me make you a chicken sandwich." And I was like, "You know, chicken sandwich kind of sounds nice." I'm like, "Your husband is is either one, experiencing
Yeah.
a supernatural event, or is two, having a complete mental breakdown.
Right,
and
right.
your answer is
Yeah.
a chicken sandwich.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
And she tries to talk him out of this. She tries to say, "Look, your father's dead. It's in the past, and you're not going to bring him back."
Right.
And I want to say, like, that's not the only reason this isn't going to work. Because he's trying to stop his father's ship deploying him over to World War II from getting like sunk by a U-boat.
Right.
If the ship doesn't get sunk, his dad still goes to World War II.
Arguably worse. Arguably like trench warfare.
Yeah, yeah.
Arguably a worse fate for sure.
Yeah.
He also and his reasoning is so selfish and shitty too, where he's like, he wants his dad. It's not because he wants to save his dad's life. It's because he goes like, when I was 5 years old, I became the man of the house. Like, at least in my mind, I did, or whatever. And
Yeah.
I never had time for childish things.
No, he became like a briefcase kid.
He was a full-on briefcase kid. By the way, do you have a briefcase kid at your school?
No, we didn't. My graduating class was 42 people. We didn't have room for a briefcase school.
We had a briefcase kid at our school for sure, who would later go on to be arrested for child pornography. So keep your eye on the briefcase kid. Is my point.
Open that briefcase.
My point. Well, here I maintain this as a thing. If you got a briefcase kid running around, kid that like wears a suit to school or whatever, check in on him. That is abnormal behavior. Something's wrong. Like, when you start acting weirdly like that and of a wrong age, that is often a sign of some shit's going on in your life. Check in on that kid.
Yeah, and now we know those kids are all Stephen Millers and Ben Shapiro's.
Yeah.
Like, bad news.
Bully them.
Yeah, no briefcase kid is going like, I'm carrying my briefcase because I've got the codes in here that will revolutionize energy. Off of fossil fuels.
Yeah. No, absolutely not. They're all Nazis. So he has this argument that he's like, I didn't have I was a briefcase kid, right? And he says like, I wrote down a line. He's like, even if we could afford a toy, I never thought about playing with them. It's a very shitty line. Yeah, it's terrible.
Even if we could afford a toy,
a singular toy,
I wouldn't know what to do with a toy.
And he goes on to say, like, I see my kid, I see our child. I don't know if it was a boy or a girl. I flat out couldn't tell. But like, I see this child and I realize the childhood I missed out on by my father dying. So he doesn't want to stop this ship to like prevent arguably thousands of American soldiers' deaths.
Right.
He just wants to like know what like to play hopscotch. It's just real selfish shit.
Yeah. He basically is like, I wish I had a different life.
Yeah.
Than the one I have now. Anyways, woman I've chosen to spend this life with. Good for me to tell you this.
Yeah, I hate this. So he manages to.
He sends a fake message.
Well, he sends a message saying like because the spy's initial message is like the ship is leaving shore on the 15th, and he changes it to the 20th so that the ship will have already left and it'll miss the sinking, right? And I wrote down here. Hold on. I was like, I hope it kind of works, and he fucks up the timeline. I said, I hope he wakes up and there's just SWAT stickers everywhere, just so he can learn to jump rope or some shit. And that's exactly what happened.
What happened?
He wakes up, and also this is weird. It's just the transition is weird. So he's like, he's writing at the kitchen table, right? And he's like, he's got this whole setup to do like the fucking Morse code.
Yeah, he's tapping away the fake message.
He's got an antenna on the roof or whatever. He falls asleep at the kitchen table. He wakes up at the kitchen table, and his father goes, "Come on, we got to go to work." He opens the door in the kitchen into a butcher shop.
Yeah,
like so. The world, I get that the timeline has changed. His dad is alive, but like that made me think it was a dream because like that's not. There isn't a butcher shop on the other side of that door.
Yeah.
This is your house. This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's the same house somehow, but there's now a butcher shop attached.
And it's also, wouldn't it be the back? Like he goes through a door in a butcher shop. That should be the back of the butcher. Like there should be meat. It shouldn't just be your kitchen. That's weird.
Yeah, and he says, I just wish he was telling his wife, I wish I'd always grown up as the butcher's kid.
Yeah.
So this butcher shop already existed in the 40s.
I guess, his dad, and not attached to the house, right? His dad was a butcher before he went to World War II.
Yeah.
Motherfucker, I didn't even catch that one. So then, and here's what's fucking hilarious. They fucking brush over this entirely. The dad's like, hey, the Mrs. Janet down the street or whatever, his niece is going to be around. You should check her out. She's real cool. Or she's a real nice lady. And it turns out he is no longer married, doesn't have a kid anymore because he has changed the timeline entirely.
Yeah.
That is given 10 seconds of airtime. Like, there's very little done to, like, he doesn't emotionally react to, what do you mean I don't have a wife and child anymore? He's just like, huh? What?
What?
And then,
what? Yeah.
And then he's like, hold on, you gotta make sure you wear this. And he hands him this Nazi identification card and he has to wear. He's like, what do you mean I have to wear this all the time?
Was it a Nazi?
It has like a fucking, like the eagle with the SWAT stick.
Okay, I didn't see that. I just thought it was a name tag. And I'm like,
you know the new rules. You gotta wear name tags.
I mean, look, other than the name tags, Nazi's not that bad.
Also, you're a white dude. You're gonna be fine. This world isn't that bad for you. You're gonna be fine. You own a business. You're good.
Yeah, it's like in Sound of Music, how like the Nazis are just guys that make you stand up straight. It's like that version of what being occupied by Nazis is.
And that's what happens. So like he looks at the badge, like what? And then a Nazi walks in, just full on the same uniform. Uniforms haven't changed in 40 years. It's 1981. Yep. Nazis rule, same exact Hugo Boss.
Same dress.
Fucking dress. And he's like, I'm here to pick up my wife's Wiener Schnitzel or whatever the fuck. And then he opens the door and looks outside, and there's swastikas driving everywhere and Volkswagens. That was a nice touch. And there's just a bunch of Nazis everywhere, and that's the end of the story.
Yeah.
He manages to save his dad, but fucked up everything, right? Classic time travel.
Which I do want to go back to that. So that means his dad's ship did not get destroyed. His dad went to World War II. Right. They lost World War II.
Yeah.
And his dad was able to come back and resume butchering, no questions asked.
Not an issue. Also, what that means is that ship of people were so bad at war
they
lost the war. They didn't. It's not like their absence of presence is what allowed us to win.
Right.
They showed up and fucked up everything so poorly that we lost the war. You're a real hero of a dad. Fucking idiot. And I also wrote, whatever, you'll be fine. You're just a white dude. Yeah. This was like 10, 12 minutes of the episode, kind of real short little snippet of a story. I liked it. It's not the best one, but it's fine. It felt like an Amazing Stories episode.
Yeah. I didn't mind
less done one. It's fast.
Yeah. It was like 10 minutes of, all right, whatever, and then like, whoa.
Yeah.
All right,
Big
all right,
twist.
okay, yeah.
And that kind of seems like what they're doing with the next episode, like the similar idea.
Yeah.
Of like, here's a short
and
little
like
story.
I didn't mind how dumb the second one was because it was just so quick.
Yeah, it's quick and exactly. Which leads us into episode 2. Now, there is a lot of talent going on in this show. This is a time where you get some older actors, they have some name value. We've got some young up and coming stars. A lot of the writers and directors have done tons and tons of TV, and the guy who writes this next story, something Block, I looked it up, who writes the Helen Hunt story, by the way, young Helen Hunt in this next episode, wrote for Alfred Hitchcock Presents all the way up through Bates Hotel. He's been consistently kind of horror genre stuff, and these are good, talented, workman TV people behind this show, which leads us into episode 2 of Darkroom, the first story being The Boogeyman Will Get You.
A title that, as we will find out, has nothing to do at all with what happens.
There's no boogeyman involved in this episode at all.
What is the boogeyman? You don't need to know.
Yeah, it doesn't come up. The opening is James Coburn. He's reading a magazine called Monsters Illustrated.
Monsters Illustrated.
But it also did kind of look like that looked like a magazine that might have existed.
Yeah.
There was a lot of that shit back in the day.
True. I looked it up and I couldn't find anything about one, but that doesn't necessarily mean it. Yeah.
But also a magazine like it for sure.
Sure,
There's tons of those. And he's like, those were the days the studios churning out the vampire stories or whatever. And he says Bela Lugosi was buried wearing his cape. And then he just moves on. That's a nice little tidbit, right. I guess. Also, you fucking nerd. You were not a vampire, you idiot.
Yeah. Also, I want to say, if this guy's lamenting where horror movies have gone, it is 1981. Yeah. They're everywhere right now, my man.
For sure. We're the birth of the slasher genre is happening as we speak. Yeah, for sure.
The Thing came out last year.
We've got Helen Hunt is at a drive-in with her little sister, who, and this is mean of me, but I wrote this, Helen's little sister is weirdly shaped. She is oddly proportioned. She looks like an adult but just small. You know what I mean? Like, some like children are often like kind of gangly or they're still kind of growing into their bodies. She looks like a fully grown human being that is just tiny. Like, it's just weird.
It was clearly like a Daphne Velma casting.
Yeah. And also, I got to say this. My girlfriend's going to kill me. She came into she was like coming home from work while I was watching the second episode. And she just unleashed, not unleashed, that's too strong of a word. But she was like, oh, Helen Hunt. She's like, And I was like, well, that's a weird, what's your beef with Helen Hunt? And she's like, oh, nothing. I just don't, I'm surprised. Like, she basically said, like, Helen Hunt is not pretty enough to be a movie star. And I was like, I guess that's, And she's like, yeah, like she ended up with Paul Reiser and then like a Jack Nicholson, and then that was the end of her career. And like, she's like, that's the level of attractiveness that she should be. Is like Paul Reiser. She's not in movies with like Brad Pitt. She's like with Paul Reiser. And I'm like, yeah, that actually does kind of make sense. She does have like a Paul Reiser ass face. And when I went back to start looking at it. She is dull in this movie or TV show. She's like, there's no like spark in her eyes. She's just like dim somehow.
I'm watching Gossip Girl right now for the first time.
Okay.
He has a major like Blake Lively in that show vibe.
Okay.
Just kind of just responding to everything, not really like lightening up at much.
By the way, how is Gossip Girl?
I really like it.
I'm not mad at it. I'll fucking watch that kind of shit.
It's dumb as hell. But it's insane. It's dumb in a crazy way.
Yeah.
Kind of like the second parts of these episodes.
Gotcha.
But the reason I never watched it is because I thought it was just like a dumb like high school show.
That's what I assumed. Because this moment it is.
It is about like the Upper East Side elites, like insanely rich people, and the insanely like airheaded things that they live.
Okay.
And I really like it now because I'm just imagining because almost the entire show happens on the Upper East Side, so I'm just like picturing like Jeffrey Epstein walking through the background all the time.
So they're driving home from the drive-in movie, and
where they saw the Phantom of the Opera, I think.
Yes, that is like I want to say 70s rendition of that movie. Like I recognize those images.
It was
a real movie.
I wasn't sure if they had like got
that. I'm sure Universal got the rights to, but like that.
Okay, yeah.
I'm sure it's like a Universal movie. Like I remember that does exist. There's a 70s Phantom or 60s.
Was NBC
or 70s.
Universal were they together back then?
I don't know. I would assume.
That would make sense.
They almost
that's also probably why James Copen was like Dracula, and that's it. The Universal monsters.
The ones we own for sure. They almost hit this guy in the robe, and then he disappears. And then there's a bat, right? There's a giant fucking bat. Now, we live in a place with a lot of bats.
Yeah.
We don't there's not giant bats in America, right? Like,
no,
and
those are South American.
And if you live in Portland or wherever the fuck they are, there's somewhere in Pacific Northwest, I don't know, the wooded areas, right? And you grow up in an area where there are bats. You know what kind of bats are around you. A giant fucking bat flies over these people a couple of times, and they're just like, oh, a bat.
Dang.
That's weird. I would also add, doesn't come in, that's not a vampire. Spoiler alert for the end of this episode. So, like, what's that fucking bat doing here?
Yeah.
It's like, it just doesn't make sense.
The bat is just the rat in The Departed. It's just there for symbolism. And I want to say, when they're driving home, they almost hit this guy. They see him in the middle of the road, and then they approach him for a very long time, and then turn away.
Yeah.
And they almost get in an accident themselves. Yeah. And,
go ahead.
And the little sister, whose name is Dee Dee, I think, she goes, that man was in the road, and he had such white skin and those eyes, and like she was trying to make him look scary. I rewinded and looked, and he's a very normal-looking dude. He looked like Scott Bakula.
Like, I would be afraid of him just because, like,
suddenly there's a man there.
There's suddenly a man there. Also, he's like, he looks like a rapist, which we'll find out 100% is a rapist. But
oh, you thought he was creepy in this episode?
Oh, you mean I was just constantly trying to fuck teenage? Well, let me rephrase that: fucking teenage girls all the time and hiding it from people. But it's okay. We'll get to it. We find out that he lives across the lake from her and her parents. He actually lived with them for a couple of weeks, a number of like 5 years ago. when she was 13 and he was working on his thesis.
With her father.
Just to give you an idea of the age separation of these two people. He was an adult when she was 13.
There was at least 6 years difference then.
Well, he's working on a thesis, so he's 20-something, right?
Oh, yeah, good point. Yeah. So probably 10 years then. Yeah.
For sure, right?
Okay, yeah, good point.
Also, at the drive-in, they go like, where's Julie? Julie hasn't shown up, right? And Julie was supposed to meet him at the movies, and they're like, oh, she probably met a boy at the lake or whatever. So that's just important for it's going to come up, right? The next, he says, he's like, oh, I actually think I've got an invite for dinner or whatever. I'm like, your dad's helping me. I'm working on a book. Your dad's helping me write or whatever.
He says that they almost hit this man. They pull up to a gas station,
right,
and they start filling up, and Helen Hunt like airs the tires, which is way more car maintenance than I've ever seen anybody put into their car. She's going to air up my tires just in case. Nobody does that. And then all of a sudden, the man is there.
Right.
He's somehow caught up to them.
He says he ran out of gas in his motorcycle or whatever.
My motorcycle that I don't need because I can run as fast as a car.
He also says when he's leaving, he asks the gas station if they can spare a quart.
Yeah, and the
You're
guy's
borrowing
like,
what?
And the guy says yes. He's like, yeah, you're gonna have a quart of gas.
That is so weird. He says, it's okay, I won't bite, and then it like hangs in the air for a second like that, and I was like, that you're just a hack vampire this whole time. That's a real bummer. The next day they're at the lake. No, not Julie. Julie's the girl that's missing. Dee Dee and Helen Hunt, they're hanging out at the lake, and they're like, oh, where's Julie? We still haven't found Julie. They are also not, like, your friend is missing at this point.
Yeah.
She didn't show up for the movie. I understand this is, like, pre-cell phone days, but, like, you're clearly friends from this town. This is a small town. Go to her house. Call her house. Any number of things. Your friend is missing. Like, have some sort of reaction to that as opposed to just, I'm just going to hang out here and sun myself.
It was like, I thought the mail would come today.
Yeah.
That was how they
Couldn't
were
give a
reacting.
shit about this friend that's missing, who is... So they're hanging on like a little pier, a little dock on the lake, and the younger sister goes in the water.
Yeah,
and then
an embarrassing dive, just awful form, almost a belly flop.
And Helen Hunt like fishes out some shit, like some leaves out of the water, and then she's pulling up hair, and she's like, "What?" And then a hand pops up. Julie's dead in the fucking lake,
which is why her hand shot up.
It's very strange. Then she's at the police station. Obviously, she's found a corpse. This police force is wild. Also, I've written down so many times, where are these people's parents? Why is the cop says, if anything else comes up, I'll let you know. Why are you letting this child know about a murder investigation?
Right, yeah.
Where are Julie's parents? No adults show up at this police station. She goes from the police station to dinner, and her folks are like, how's everything going? Having a good time. You just found a murdered corpse of your friend in the lake. No one gives a shit.
At the house where the parents were at the time.
100%. And the parents don't show up at the police station to be like, oh my God, we came as quick as we could. Couldn't give a fuck about this child.
Mom, Dad, we're going to take this body to the police station. Okay, have fun.
So weird.
Our
police, our Pat or whatever the fuck his name is, Phil. It's a P word. Shows he's at the police station talking to the cops. He walks up to Dee Dee and he's like, "Hey, do me a favor. Don't tell your sister you saw me here."
Meanwhile, Helen Hunt already saw him.
Sees him. Looks at the cop and says, "Oh, what's he doing here?" So I don't even understand the point of that. But also, huge red flag, by the way, the reddest of flags. If someone's like, "Hey, don't tell anybody you saw me at the police station." Oh, why? Is it because you're a fucking criminal? Maybe that's why. Also, he admits he's been dating Julie for the last few weeks. These are high school girls. She is talking about going away to college next year, right? At most, she's 18, because he says 5 years ago you were, 13 or whatever. So at the most, she's 18, which is gross. But, like, there doesn't seem to be any, like, this is a bad dude going on.
Yeah, this is the guy who lives at the lake and dates our daughters. Like, he's fine.
Who dates our teenage daughters.
The Drake of the lake. Like, he's fine. He's harmless.
Also the cops were real shitty when they show up, because they're like, so what was she doing at the lake? And Helen Hunt's like, oh, nobody goes swimming after dark. And you're like, yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
she must have been like with a boy. Like,
yeah. She slut herself to death.
That's exactly what's in it. It's so gross. Also, they're very nonchalant about this murder. The cop picks up a phone call from a reporter at one point and is just like giving all this detail about this murder and how there was another murder a couple of 40 miles away in another town. It's very similar. Helen Hunt's like, hey, was her neck fucked up? Like Julie's neck was all fucked up. And she's like, I can't tell you anything until after the coroner's report is done. But you're going to give her what's in the coroner's report after it's done?
Right,
She is a child. Why is she involved in this investigation?
Look, you come down here after the autopsy, I'll tell you everything.
It's so weird. There's another giant bat. They have dinner. With Phil's over for dinner. It's literally she found the corpse of her friend 4 hours ago.
Right, yeah.
And nobody's asking her how she is. She kind of is she's dazed and kind of staring off into nothing. And then she's like, I'm sorry, I have to go. And everyone's like, oh, I wonder what's gotten into her.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, post-traumatic stress disorder maybe, you fucking monsters.
She has a clearer schedule for a funeral this week. It's not good. They've got a lot going on.
At one point, Helen Hunt says, I keep seeing Julie's face. Yeah, you pulled her out of a lake this afternoon. Of course you keep seeing her face.
She says, I'm sorry, I keep seeing Julie's face. And that's why she keeps pushing Philip off of her as he keeps trying to kiss her.
He kissed her multiple
times.
Very gross.
Just out of nowhere. There was no signals going on from either of them.
No, there wasn't let's say there were signals. Let's say this girl is flirting with him. Let's say that. You don't kiss her, you 28-year-old fucking creep.
Yeah.
She is a child.
I wrote this down too. After the first time he kisses her, she pushes him away and he goes, I'm sorry if I offended you.
I'm like, sorry if my sexual assault offended you. It's so fucking gross. At one point, Dee Dee says, is back on the vampire thing, and Helen Hunt's like, he's not a vampire. And she goes, look, there's something, I wrote that, he's like, where is it? He scares me. There's something about him. Yeah. He's a fucking predator. You should be follow your vibes, man. Yeah. You got to trust your instinct. Right. This man's a problem.
Right. I don't care if he's a vampire or not. Yeah. He is a monster. We know this.
Yeah, 100%. He's
not scary if he's not one of the Universal monsters, though. This is NBC.
And here's such a weird transition, right? So the mother and Dee Dee are going away to school, camp. I think
she's going to drop him off at college. Drop Dee Dee off at college.
But Dee Dee's younger than her. And Helen Hunt, who's 18, it's all weird, right?
Yeah, that is. I didn't understand the age differences there. I was like, are they supposed to be like fraternal twins?
No, Dee Dee's clearly younger than Helen Hunt.
Yeah,
that's their little sister. But the next scene is Helen Hunt is gonna make a cake for Phil. It's just it's like she goes to the store to buy stuff to make a cake, and the guy's like,
"Is that what she was?" I could not tell what food she was buying.
She's buying the ingredients for a cake. I couldn't tell by the ingredients, but the guy behind the counter is like, "You're trying." Like when a girl your age tries to buy stuff to make a cake, she's trying to impress a boy, and she's like, "Oh, whatever." So why? Phil just forced himself on you. Your friend is dead. He's a creep. You're making a cake? What is this energy going on right now? And then the next thing we see is her fucking horribly frosting cake. Some nailed it level fucking cake frosting going on. But in the thing, she's like, oh yeah, I'm making it for Phil. He lives, and the guy's like, who the fuck is Phil? Oh yeah, he just lives 100 yards that way at the house on the lake or whatever. He goes, oh, I remember hearing somebody moved in there. He don't shop. I've never met him before. And she's like, oh, well, he has to shop here. It's the only place in town to buy groceries or whatever. And he's like, no, he doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't shop here. And I was like, that's because they don't sell blood. But and he says, oh, maybe he works at night. They're really going heavy on the fucking he's a vampire thing out of nowhere, right?
Maybe he hasn't had time to reflect. Do you know what I'm saying?
But then also I realized if he doesn't go out, so the idea is oh, he's never seen during the day, right? But then how was he at the police station?
Yeah. Right, yeah.
That was clearly during the day.
Yeah. He did in Blade where they wear the suits and the helmets. Yeah. He was on a motorcycle. That's what it is. Okay, there we go. We figured it out. Yeah, he wore the Blade motorcycle protective suits.
He goes to... So she's starting to get suspicious of all this information. So
she keeps telling her dad, and her dad keeps saying, "Oh, that's silly." This is the least protective dad.
The little girl.
seen.
So the little girl is the one who keeps talking about the vampire thing, right? At one point, while Phil is over at the house, so Phil's coming over for dinner and have this cake. As soon as she sneaks out because she's gonna go wait. She's gonna go sneak into his house and look around for clues.
Yeah, she says she's going to go to the store, which we know is closed because the store's not open at night.
Also, she was just at the store. So
She's just at the
it's a
store.
terrible lie.
Yeah.
But she sneaks out to go to the house when he's leaving so that she can sneak in and go, look for clues or whatever,
Yeah.
right? While she's gone, the dad gets a phone call from the mom who's like, she's like, what? He's like, huh? What? Okay. I can tell you right now, this man is not a vampire. So I understand the little girl. She's obsessed with horror movies. She's a child. She's got this thing in her head about the guy being a vampire. If you're the mom, do you call the dad and check? Or do you just tell the little girl, hey, you're freaking out. I understand. We're going to talk about what's real and what's not. You call the dad and be like, hey, can you just quick make sure Phil's not a vampire? Like,
Yeah, you either calm the daughter down or you take the daughter seriously and you say, get that guy out of here. You don't walk that weird middle line of like, let's check to see if he's a vampire. I will call your dad and your dad will give him a visual pat down and like determine whether or not he's a vampire. Right. While they're reading this guy's thesis called Demonology in the Modern World.
It's so she at one point. So when she sneaks in the house, she finds that right, and she's going through it, and then she turns the page, and there's just like a gross picture of a monster face.
It looked like the Dark Mark from Harry Potter,
and she's like, ah! She just like screams and drops the book. It's so dumb.
And on the page before, there were the words. It was like Latin or fake Latin. It was like De Vermis Mysterious.
So what she finds in the house is two things. One, there's no mirror in the bathroom. And two, she finds this key. Now, the cops had told her that Julie had a key to the boathouse, which is where they found her clothes when they were like, oh, she was being a tramp. But one thing they didn't find was the key to the boathouse, right? So Helen Hunt's like, oh, this has got to be the boathouse key. Right. Why does he have it? Blah, blah, blah. She goes down to the boathouse to investigate. He shows up because he's just found out that the daughter thinks he's a vampire. He shows up there with the key to the boathouse and is like, Julie made a copy. This is where we used to meet. This is the most pedophile behavior. We have to meet in secret in a fucking boathouse because no one can see us. We have secret keys. You're just grooming this child. This dude.
No, these were normal dates.
It's so fucking gross. And he's like, I know your sister thinks I'm a vampire, but look, and they stand in front of a mirror. He has a reflection, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm not a vampire. See, duh. And she's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Here, make out with me or whatever. It's fucking gross.
Yeah. I'll make out with any non-vampire. I'll tell you that.
But then she's looking in the mirror still. He walks over to the door, and you see him reach and touch her shoulder. And I was like, oh, what the fuck's up with his hand?
Yeah.
He's got weird, furry hand with long, stringy fingers and fingernails or whatever. And then he starts talking about how I know I'm not, like, it's not enough that you know I'm not a vampire because, like, your parents will joke about it, but then people in town will start to wonder. And, you know, a man's reputation is a very tenuous thing. And it's like, wait a minute. Your argument is that, like, you're not a vampire, but you're concerned people will think you are a vampire and not a child molester? That should be a bigger concern on your reputation. But it turns out he's not a vampire. He's a werewolf.
Because right before we see a big old full moon over his shoulder.
And then he turns around and he's a werewolf and he fucking kills. And he starts saying how he's going to have to kill her parents and Dee Dee because they're going to, like, spread the word about his. They're going to, like, let people know or whatever. But he kills her. This is why I like this episode, this story, and the next one in particular. What I was starting to say previously is, like, this is not a morality play.
Yeah.
The villain wins. Like, this child molesting werewolf wins at the end of this episode.
Yeah.
So it's just like a spooky story. And, like, that's kind of fun. In the way that this next short one is also, I think, very fun.
Right. I think they figured maybe the next ones will be more like this, but it seems like after the first one, at least when they were writing the second one, they figured out, like, oh, if we were going to do a morality play, we need to have, like, a coherent, like,
story,
line of thoughts.
And we can't do that. So here's a fucking werewolf.
Let's just do something creepy.
Here's some twists. Yeah. Episode. So the second story in this episode is called Uncle George.
This is. I don't know. I should have been bored the whole way through this, but I was like a little intrigued by the whole thing, and this ended up being like by far my favorite so far.
Yeah, because like so. This is the James Coburn section is like he says something about this, like he says this couple's name and they live in this house. Well, he's talking about fear. He opens up with like when you're a kid you're afraid of monsters under the stairs or snakes or bugs, but when you become an adult you have real adult fears like how am I going to pay the mortgage or put food on the table. These people live in this house and this house has seen better days, much like this couple has. And we find this house. This is older couple like. We see the woman. She's taking care of an older relative named Uncle George in this bed. He's watching. I wrote it down.
I did too. Buckaroo Bonanza.
Buckaroo Bonanza, which was clearly just fucking Wheel of Fortune. But he's watching Buckaroo Bonanza, and
she's like bedridden.
He's bedridden. He's very sick and old. He's like he's like answering questions on the like out loud from the game show, but he's talking like he can barely talk. She comes in, she's looking out the window, and she's like, oh, that boy's down there, he's playing in the mud, he's going to be in trouble. She closes the blind, she's like, why don't you have a rest? Oops, he's dead. He's just died in this old man dying way.
Yeah.
She goes downstairs and tells her husband, who's like Claude Atkins is an actor from fucking he was on like Bonanza. This dude's been around.
He was on Buckaroo Bonanza.
Tells her that Uncle George has passed away, and he's like, "Oh, it's so sad." Well, first he says he's like, "This dresser is going to be good as new when I'm done with it." He's like working in this in his like shop or whatever. He's like, "We'll find out." He's a carpenter. Yeah. And she's like, "Well, what are we going to do?" And he's like, "What we've always planned to do." And she's like, "I don't know if we should." And he's like, "Look, we're not backing out on this now.
Yeah,
we've made our plans."
He's like, "If I was working, we could do something different."
Yeah, I can't keep steady work because I have this bad heart. So this is what we have to do. And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I think the reason why I was so like this episode kept me, because it is kind of slow. Is like I couldn't figure out what the twist was going to be. I figured out right away. I was like, "Oh, they're going to fucking pretend he's not dead and keep cashing his fucking Social Security checks or whatever."
Yeah.
Because clearly they need the money. I was like, okay, I get that. But what's the fucking, where's the, what's the evil going to be? What's the bad? What's the twist? So he goes down to like Skid Row and he's like trying to meet these old hobos. And he meets this old guy named Dixie, whatever the fuck his name is.
His name is Dixie, but he says his birth name was Herbert.
But nobody's ever called me that since I was 5.
And I thought it was really funny because the husband's name is Bert. So it was Bert and Herbert.
Oh, that's weird. And he basically he's like, hey, he keeps going to people old timer, which I always fun.
Yeah.
He's
like
like
a 90-year-old man with a Ronald Reagan hair dye job is calling people old timer. Like, the nerve, man.
He's like, hey, can I buy you a drink to this old like hobo sitting on a bench? And he's like, oh, you're not lying to a old man, are you? You're gonna break my heart or whatever. So they go to this bar.
Which do people just like go up to you and like say they'll buy you a drink and then walk away?
Yeah. That's a weird thing to do.
That's a weird trick. Yeah.
To a wino. And he brings him to this bar. Now, one thing that I noticed that I love is, did you see the pinball machine?
No.
You don't even get to see the name so much. There's a guy playing pinball. I love that pinball was for scumbags back in the day. Like, pinball is like, if you've been to like pinballs or whatever.
Yeah.
If you look at the old pinball machines, it's all tits. It's not for children. Pinball was in bars and like seedy and like pool halls and seedy places. And like you gambled on it and shit. So when you see old pinball machines, it's just fucking like girls in cut off shorts and tits, and it's all just sleaze. And
it was like the nude photo hunt game. But
of the time. And if it's funny if you go like, because like, you know, I've been to pinballs a few times and you can see the progression where it has like they're moving into it being, oh, this is going to be an arcade and kids will see it, but they haven't like there's a overlap at a point. There's a pinball machine in pinballs that's a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles machine that has no turtles on the fucking front of it. It's just April O'Neil with her tits hanging out. It's like it's so fucking funny to me.
That's so weird because that's never what that show was.
No, it's for children. But it's just this weird mashup. Somebody in a pinball place was like, no, we still need to keep this one for the bars.
Oh my god.
Oh, it makes me laugh.
No, I haven't. I got to go back to pinball.
Yeah, look at it. It's like either like it'll be like, oh, like a barkeep or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's predominantly girls in like cartoon drawings of girls in cutoff shorts bent over cars. Like that's mostly what pinball machines were. So he brings them in his bar. They order a double Scotch scotch and a cold beer for $3. I love the fucking
Dang.
1981, man.
Oh boy, it's like basket prices.
And I like, so Dixie shows up and the bartender's like, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Clearly this wino's my fucking problem, right? But he's like, my friend's paying. So he's got money. And he tells him, look, our Uncle George passed away, and Uncle George has been getting $1,000 a month on a pension from the railroad company. He used to work for the railroads.
Yeah, he's on disability.
He's on disability.
He got, like, hurt at work, he says.
For 17 years, he's been getting his $1,000 a week, but he died. And like we've been taking good care of him, like treat him like he's my own dad. And
we kept him nice and comfy in that twin bed.
At first, when we took him in, it wasn't about the money, but times have gotten hard, and I haven't been working steady. And my wife and I have come to depend on this money. But every once in a while, it's been like 3 years since one has, but every once in a while, someone from the railroad company shows up to check on Uncle George and make sure he's still alive. We make sure he's still out sending out these texts, right? So unless it's this, like, they won't know who Uncle George is. There's no picture. It's 3 years. It's not going to be the same person. So we just need somebody to be Uncle George. And he's like, what's in it for me? He goes, your own room, your own TV,
food,
three
drinks.
square meals a day. And the guy's like, and scotch? And he's like, and all the scotch you fucking want, right?
Yeah.
So they bring him home, and he is wild drunk. I don't know how many double scotches they have, but when they pull in the driveway, he is singing unintelligible noises. It's just weird. The wife is like, kind of like, oh, I don't know about this guy or whatever. They bring him up, they put him in bed. Bert, the husband, is downstairs digging a fucking grave for the real Uncle George, because they're going to bury him in the basement. And I'm like, oh, is he going to die? Like, I still haven't figured out where the twist is going to be.
Yeah, because he's like not doing well digging this hole.
No,
like,
he's shaking and sweating, and it's like he's got a bad heart. That's the whole premise of the thing. So I was like, this is why it was still effective for me, because I haven't figured out the twist. Like every other one of the other ones, I didn't figure out it was a werewolf and not a vampire, but like I get it.
Yeah.
This one, I was like, where are they going with this? She says, I gave him that other bottle of scotch, like you said. He's like, good, we'll go check on them in an hour. She goes upstairs. He's like half asleep, holding a glass of scotch on his belly. She turns the TV off, and she's like, I was wondering if you wanted a rub down before you went to sleep. And I was like, what in the fuck is happening? This is a weird turn.
Yeah.
And he goes,
I mean, I assume she meant like his feet, but that was still very a weird offer.
It's a weird offer. And he's like, oh, ain't nobody in my whole life ever gave me a rub down. I would hope not.
Right,
you creep. He starts to say, like, so Bert kind of he starts talking about how, like, something's not making any sense. You said that Uncle George was 65, but he's been getting a pension for 17 years, so he must have retired when he was like 40 something. And who gets to do that? Like, the math isn't adding up. But he's like wild drunk.
Yeah,
and
also the answer is firefighters. They get to retire
very early in police and all.
And like underwater welders. Kind of people,
dangerous job. Bert has showed up. And he's like, I told you it was disability, not a pension. He was injured on the job. He was working on a rail, and a train came in. Bert is walking in with a toolbox at this point, and she's like washing his legs off.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, this train just came, and he didn't get out of the way. Hit him at the legs. Severed both of them right above the knee. And I was like, oh, shit. And then the last thing you see is Bert turned around with a fucking table saw, like a power saw, and he's going to cut fucking this wino's fucking legs off. And the wife is like, all right. Like, neither of them are like, I'm so sorry. It's like, oh, fuck, this couple's fucking weird. And then that's it. It's like a short piece, 10 minutes maybe.
She's like, you want to probably finish that bottle of scotch?
Yeah. And also, they're just going to cut his fucking legs off. I was like, I like the show. That story I thought was great.
Also, I guess they were going to get new sheets after this.
I just threw that in the bed. Yeah. You didn't put plastic down or nothing.
Do you guys remember to get like a couple belts or tourniquets or something?
You would have like that. You would think they would have done that, like when he should have been like taking out belts or whatever, and then come up with the table saw. But nope, he just turns around with that table saw, cut his fucking legs off.
I guess if you want to maximize the effect, you have to hit him with the saw first.
Yeah, well, no, I think you build to it because like, oh, why is he taking out belts? Why is he? Oh, like you do that while they're telling the story, and you're like, oh, what's he doing? This doesn't make sense. And then boom, the saw at the end. Also, are you going to like cauterize those wounds? What are you going to do? This man is going to bleed to death. I was wondering, are they going to have like, oh, they're just going.
Mm-hmm.
through Uncle George's because they can't get the fucking amputation surgery right.
Yeah, I was like,
yeah.
that's kind of, well, I guess at the beginning they were like, that was Uncle George died. And like, the way they set it up, it seemed like that was legitimately the first Uncle George.
Yeah. Oh, no, for sure. I thought I was like, I kind of wanted it to be like more Uncle, like,
right.
What we would have found out was that, like, that Uncle George in the bed wasn't the first. Like, they've been doing this to keep up with the pension check.
It's like how the Simpsons, they have like 7 gravestones for all the snowballs. It's like Uncle George 4.
I like this episode a lot. I watched it and thought it was super fun. It's hard to watch on the app because there's so many goddamn commercials.
And they're all the same commercial. Yeah.
And it's 5 of them every commercial break. And it's I don't care about your fucking organic deodorant or whatever they're fucking telling me, but what do you think it's worth people? I mean, there's only 7 episodes, right? So we're gonna get through this one pretty quick. Do you think it's worth people watching? I think fucking watch this show. I'm like, it's weird enough that it's like, get stoned and give it a watch. I think it'll be fun.
I think this. I would say yes to the second episode.
Yeah.
Because you don't need to watch the first episode.
No, there's an anthology. You just jump in wherever. Yeah.
So far, I would say yes to the second, no to the first.
Word.
I'm not ready to say go ahead and watch the whole series.
Right on. I would say watch a montage of James Coburn being a weird, horny film developer.
Oh yeah.
But what do you got to plug? This will be out tomorrow.
Tomorrow, okay. On Sunday, Nicole, my girlfriend, and I will be emceeing a fundraiser for Bernie Sanders at Chirp Charlie's at starting at 4 p.m. There'll be bands all afternoon, and there's going to be a comedy block that you are going to be on.
I am on that
along with Avery Moore and Evan Rabelais, and we're just going to have a good time, raise some money for Bernie. There'll be plenty of chances to sign up for organizing, volunteer, and you can donate there too. There'll be contests, all that kind of thing. There'll be some great bands. It'll be a fun time.
Excellent. Definitely come to that. I will be there for sure. What's your social media?
My Twitter is at @Hrabik, AHRABIK, and Instagram is the same thing.
I am at Chris Cubis on all social media. If you like the show, rate, review, subscribe. Give us a subscribe on iTunes. It super helps us out. Tell your friends. It helps us as well. And we will see you next week.